Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching the Daily News Simplified, and today is 10th of June. Now, in today's discussion, we'll be discussing 7 important articles from 3 newspapers that are The Hindu, Indian Express, and The Business Line. So, without wasting your time, let us straight away move to the first article. But before that, please make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe button, as these buttons help our content to reach more and more aspirants. So, in our today's first article, we'll be talking about ports. No, not these ports, actual shipping ports. Because an article in the Business Line newspaper today highlights that Gujarat's minor port have come of age because of their development. Now, countries' shipping ports they are essential from a macroeconomic point of view as they are gateways to international trade. Further, from UPSC's perspective, you can see that GS Paper 3 syllabus highlights infrastructure with relation to ports. Additionally, there have been questions related to levels of infrastructure and transport development in the country. Case in point, this mains PYQ of the year 2014, where you can see question appeared on National Urban Transport Policy and it asked the aspirants to critically analyze the government strategies in this regard. So from that point of view, you can expect a question on development of ports in the country because it has been in news in the recent past. So there are generally categories of ports and there are of two types. First, they are called as major ports, which there are 12 in number. Whereas as far as smaller ports are concerned, they are categorized as minor ports and there are as many as 200 of them in our entire country. Now these larger or major ports they are regulated as per as Major Port Authorities Act of the year 2021 and they come under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Shipping of the Government of India. Whereas the regulation of minor ports are concerned, they are regulated as per as Indian Ports Act of 1908 and they fall under the jurisdiction of state maritime boards or government of or state governments. So these are two categories of ports and through all these two categories of ports there are international trade happening. So we'll be discussing the need, importance and challenges faced in the ports infrastructure or scaling up of ports infrastructure in our country. So let us first understand why are these port infrastructure important from Indian economy's perspective. Now, as I've already highlighted, these ports they act as a gateway to international trade because as much as 95% of India's trade with other countries and by volume, these are undertaken through ports of our country. So you can understand for virtue of India's trade with other countries, it is important for us to develop quite a large amount of ports with adequate amount of infrastructure. Now moving to their economic impact on our country. Now these ports they are avenues to create or generate employment. In addition to they are avenues where investors of across the globe they invest in these ports. As India being a developing country, it has a lot of opportunities in creation of port infrastructure. So going by this logic, even the government of India recognized the importance of ports. Hence, it liberalized the foreign direct investment norms in creation of port infrastructure in the country. As currently, as much as 100% of foreign direct investment through automatic route is permissible in creation of port infrastructure in the country. So these not just create jobs, but they are also avenues for creation or attraction of investment in the country. So these are its economic impact on Indian economy. Now let us understand how ports play a key role in ensuring the supply chain efficiency of India. Now, as you can understand, any manufacturing process requires large amount of raw materials. And some of these raw materials may have been sourced from other countries. So, it is quite essential for any manufacturing activity to undertake imports of raw materials and how these raw materials are imported into the country. Naturally, through ports of our country. So, proper functioning and efficient functioning of the ports, it is very much essential for having a efficient supply chain of our country's manufacturing process. And it not just makes our manufacturing process more efficient, but it also encourages trade both in and out of the country, eventually leading to increased country's exports. Now, also, manufacturing activity is a competitive activity. That manufacturing activity or products that are manufactured in the country, it should be of low cost as compared to the products of other countries for it to become more attractive. Hence, it is very much essential for any ports of the country to provide for quick supply and efficient supply of raw materials, because it then enables the industry to keep their cost of logistics, that is cost of transport, low. As any industry will be able to lower the cost of raw materials through its transport, it will eventually reduce the overall cost of products of manufacturing activity. Hence, by reducing the cost of our overall products, we'll be able to have a competitive trade across the world. So these are very much essential for not just increasing trade, but also make our products more economically competitive. Now let us understand how these ports generate revenues. Now these ports, they are avenues as they levy various tariffs, custom duties, or other fees which are required for handling charges. Now all these three fees, they contribute to earnings of a port, which is quite a significant amount for the government. So it in a way acts as a revenue generating mechanism for government or port operators in general. Further, these ports play a key role in ensuring connectivity, both connectivity between the countries and connectivity within the countries, as raw materials can be shipped from one port of the country to another port in the same country. So this in a way not just creates inter-country connectivity, but also intra-country connectivity. So because of importance in international trade, its economic impact, ensuring supply chain efficiency, requiring competitive trade, generation of revenue, as well as ensuring regional connectivity are important facets of port infrastructure and their development in India. However, despite various developments, government is trying to focus more on port infrastructure in the country, and these are reflected in the challenges also. So in this regard, let us understand what are the challenges which are faced by ports in our country currently. Now, as you can understand, most of the major ports, they are quite developed in nature. But when it comes to minor ports, they have inadequate levels of technological development, as well as they have inadequate level of infrastructure development also. Because first of all, these minor ports, they do not have adequate shipping berths. Now these shipping berths, you can imagine, are sort of parkings for the ship where most of the equipments are there, which helps unload the cargo from ship into the port. Now these adequate amounts of berth, they are very much essential for parking of higher amount of ships on the port. So whenever these berths are not adequate in any port, it leads to what you can call congestion in ports. Because in order to enable one ship to harbor in your port, you require to send one ship away from the port, which leads to congestion. Hence, this congestion, it reduces the efficiency of ports generally, and it also creates an inadequate level of turnaround time, which we'll explain later on. Further, ports, they are subjected to large amount of inspection and security by both custom authorities as well as port authorities, as quite a significant percent of goods which are shipped into India, they are inspected by the port and custom authorities for various circumstances. Now the time taken for these inspection and scrutiny, despite undertaken several developments, it is quite high even in recent times. So because of these three factors, that are inadequate level of technology and infrastructure, congestion in our especially minor ports, and high amount of inspection and security time, it leads to prolonged turnaround time of Indian ports. Now earlier it was more than 4 days. That is for ship to enter into harbor and empty all its cargo. It is called as a turnaround time, which earlier took about 4 days on an average. Now, despite because of various reforms that are undertaken in the port sector, India has been able to reduce this time to about 2 days currently. But even despite reducing the turnaround time by 50%, this turnaround time is quite high as far as average turnaround time of global ports are concerned. Because currently the average turnaround time of global ports is about 1.04 day per ship. Whereas the major ports of our globe are concerned, such as ports in Netherlands and Singapore, they have significantly less or reduced turnaround time. For example, Netherlands, it has a turnaround time of about 0.6 day, whereas Singapore has about 0.8 day per ship of turnaround time. So you can see, despite various efforts, government is able to lower the turnaround time. However, when you compare it with global average and average of major shipping ports, it is still well below the desired level. Understood. Now, most of the ports, especially the ports which are located in the east coast of a country, they witness high amount of siltation and deposits of alluvial material, because on east coast of the country, most of the major rivers, they have their deltas. Now these deltas, they are filled with silt and alluvial material, which makes it difficult for a ship or a large ship to park in our ports. Now this requires significant amount of dredging. Now dredging is removal of siltation and alluvial materials from our coastal areas. Now this dredging process is a time taking process and also a costly process. So the cost undertaken to undertake the dredging operation, it adds to the cost of port operations, thereby adding the logistical cost in our country. So these are the what you can call challenges that ports in our country face. Now before ending, let me tell you one more challenge, that is the issue related to management of these ports. Now in the previous slide I highlighted that major ports, they are regulated by Government of India through Model Port Authorities Act, and whereas the minor ports, they are regulated by state government bodies. So this creates what you can call a management issue, as different bodies are responsible for different ports, thereby causing coordination issues. Further, as you can see, these ports, they also have a rigid regulatory framework, which again jeopardizes their efficient management. So these are the overall set of challenges that are faced by ports currently, and this significantly hampers the efficiency of our ports. So in this regard, Government of India in recent times have undertaken various steps in order to make our ports more advanced and also very efficient. So let us understand what are the government initiatives in this regard. Now the first and probably the most important initiative was the Sagarmala project, which envisages port-led development in the country. Because through port-led development, any government will be able to reduce logistic cost, and it will also improve the connectivity of our ports through mainland. Further, government also brought what you can call a national logistics portal, called Marine. Now this portal, it envisages a single window platform for all the stakeholders, which is essential for getting government and regulatory permits. Further, through Sagar Setu app, government, it envisages seamless movement of goods, which enables tracking of goods as well as enables payment of for goods and services for port services. So through Sagar Setu app, the government, it wants to ensure seamless connectivity of our different ports and also enables tracking of goods throughout the port process. Further, as I have already highlighted, the Major Port Authorities Act, it gives greater autonomy to countries' ports. As this autonomy, it is essential for improving the managerial efficiency and also enable infrastructure development in our port. Additionally, through Indian Vessels Act, the government it wants to undertake the development of inland waterways, as these are important for ensuring the development of inland waterways, and also it will make our shipping process more efficient. Additionally, through Maritime India Vision of the year 2030, the government it wants to make our ports world class in nature by undertaking infrastructure development, as these world class ports will then be able to act as a transshipment port where goods from different countries come, and through this transshipment ports it will enable greater exports from our country. So these are all the sum of government initiatives that have been taken, which has improved the efficiency of our ports despite several challenges. And because of these efficiencies, as I've already highlighted, government has been able to reduce the turnaround time in general by as much as 50%. However, let us understand what are the the water ahead in this regard, so as to make our ports even better. Now, first and probably the most important suggestion in this regard is to undertake significant amount of infrastructure development, as ports require high amount of berthing facilities, upgrade in their storage infrastructure and their handling capabilities through use of modern machines such as cranes and technological advancements. Additionally, by improving the private sector participation, government is looking to improve the investment in these ports through private sector, as they will not just improve the management of the ports but will also enable significant amount of infrastructure development. Further, through establishing coastal economic zones, it is very much essential for development or port-led development, because in these coastal economic zones the government will set up many manufacturing units, and these manufacturing units will be quickly be able to source their raw materials, as they will be nearly or very located in very close vicinity to Indian ports in general. Further, by improving connectivity, we will be able to reduce logistic cost and also reduce the turnaround time of countries' ports. Further, through digitizing operation, it is very much essential through use of technology such as blockchain, Internet of Things, as well as data analytics, as it will help port authorities analyze what kind of shortcomings are there in the efficiencies or management of ports. And through e-documentation, it will also improve the inspection and handling of port goods. Further, reducing regulatory burden, it is very much essential to grant quick permits and clearances, as it will in a general improve the climate of ease of doing business in the country, because any export entity will be able to get their permits and clearances in a quick time. Hence, it will enable these entities to export their goods from India, thereby leading to their increased income. So these are the suggestions which will hope that government undertakes, as it is very much essential for development of port infrastructure in the country. As I've already highlighted, this has a multiplier effect on Indian economy, as it not just increase the level of investment from abroad, but it also generates significant amount of direct employment as well as indirect employment in our country's manufacturing sector. So with this, let us move to the second article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now, every time whenever the election results are declared, there increases the demand for proportional representation in the country. Now, the system of elections, they are important from GS paper 2 perspective, because the syllabus highlights salient features of representation of People's Act. Further, the subject of electoral reforms is a key area of interest for UPSC. As you can see in the mains PYQ of the year 2017, where a question appeared on electoral reforms in general. So in this regard, let us discuss the context of today's article. Now, as you can see, today's article highlights that in recent trends, we have seen that parties, they are gaining majority seats in the Lok Sabha, which means more than 50% of seats. For example, in the year 2014, the largest party in Lok Sabha, that was Bharatiya Janata Party, it was able to secure 282 seats, which is more than 50% of seats. However, as we can see the vote share, it was just 31%. And this same happened in the year 2019 as well, because BJP was able to secure 303 seats, which again is more than 50%. However, its vote share was only 37.3%. And this was not just the case in the year 2014 and 19. Because in the year 1984, the Indian National Congress under the leadership of Rajiv Gandhi, it was able to get as much as 414 seats, which was the highest amount of seats secured by any political party in the independent India. Now, this means that the Congress was able to secure as much as 76% seat in the Lok Sabha. However, let us take a look at its vote share, because it was only 48.1% vote share. So you can understand the amount of seats that political party has got in Lok Sabha. It is disproportionate to the amount of vote it had secured. And this was due to the prevailing system of, or existing system of voting in the country, which is categorized as the first past the post system. Now, in this system, it is also a winner takes all system, where the candidate who secures the highest amount of vote in the election, he or she is declared as a winner. Now, as you can see, it is not necessary for a candidate to get more than 50% of seats to be able to be declared as a winner. The candidate can also be declared a winner if he or she is able to get less than 50% of votes. And let me tell you how. For example, there are 4 candidates in an election, and the highest amount of vote is gained by this red candidate who secures 32% of vote. However, if this 32% of vote share, it is more than these 3 candidates, then it means that the red candidate is declared as a winner according to the first past the post system. Now, this system was undertaken in India post the independence because of its much needed simplicity. Because at that time, most of the India's electorate was not literate. So it was required for a simple electoral procedure in order to be able to have a elected democracy. So in this regard, let us understand why this system was adopted in the first place by understanding what are the related benefits of this particular system. As I have already told you, it is a system which requires reduced amount of complexity, because it is a simple system, as it is easy for people to understand that the candidate who secures the largest amount of vote is declared as a winner. And this became very much important because at the time of independence, most of India's voters, they were not adequately literate. In addition, it was envisaged that at the time of independence, the protection of sovereignty and political stability was very much important. So this system was envisaged because it ensures less amount of fragmentation, as it envisaged as at most the government will be formed by either of 2 major political parties. Hence, in a way, it envisaged a 2-party system in our country. However, in practice, we have seen the difference between 2-party and multi-party system. Also, this system, it ensured formation of stable government in succeeding elections, as in elections on 1952, 1957, 1962, India was able to get a majority government as one party was able to secure more than 50% of seats. So in a way, this system provided for stable government, which was very much essential for protection of Indian democratic system in general. Additionally, in this kind of election, you vote for a particular candidate. And based on the promises made by the candidate, the vote is secured by the candidate from its electorate. So this system, it ensures more accountability of the candidate, as he or she, after the period of 5 years, when they come to get your votes again, they show what kind of performance they've had in the last 5 years. So the voter can gauge the performance of the candidate based on the promises he or she had made in the previous election. So this ensures more accountability of the candidate towards their electorate. So this was the benefits of the first past the post system. However, there are significant challenges as well, because as I've already highlighted, it is only necessary for a candidate to secure highest amount of vote, and he or she should not secure more than 50% even to be declared as a winner. However, in this example, as you can see, as much as 68% of votes which was given to other candidates who had not won, it has gone, you can call, as a waste. So this brings our attention to the challenge of first past the post system, as significant amount of votes, they are wasted because the candidates who are given as much as 68% of votes, they are not declared as a winner. So in this regard, the alternative system, it is called as a proportional response system or proportional representation system, because in this voting system, candidates, they are, or the political parties, they get proportionate amount of seats in proportion to the amount of votes that secured. For example, if any party secures 30% of votes in an election, this means that in legislature, that party will be allocated 30% of seats. So you can understand this translate into direct amount of seats as in proportion to the votes they have garnered. So this is what you can call is a proportional representation system. As the name suggests, the parties, they get seats which is directly proportional to the amount of votes they had secured. Now this system also has significant benefits over the first past the post system. For example, this system, it ensures fairer representation, as parties, they get votes equal to the, or the party, they get seats equal to the amount of votes they had secured. So this also ensures the smaller parties in our democratic system, they also get adequate representation. And also, it also reduces the amount of wasted votes, because any vote that you give, it contributes to a party's vote share, which directly translates into the amount of seats they get. So this in a way reduces the amount of wasted vote, and it also encourages increase of turnout during election, which strengthens the very fabric of Indian democracy. Further, this voting system, it also promotes the emergence of multi-party system, because there are multiple parties in our vibrant democracy, as India is quite diverse and it is divided based on caste, religion and class. And n number of parties, they represent various interests of various sections of their electorate. For example, there are caste based parties, there are parties which cater to interest of one religion, and also class based parties like communist parties. So all these parties, they get a fair share of representation in the PR system of elections. Hence it promotes or increases the vibrancy of our country's democratic system, and it also makes our country more representative in nature. Further, this system also encourages formation of coalition government, where one party cannot form a government without the support of other parties as well. And it is important to ensure collaborative as well as consensual policy making in a country, because any policy which will be enacted by the parliament will have consent of multiple parties in general. Hence, it will reduce the amount of divide which currently exists in our country. However, there are also various challenges associated with this system, because first of all, it is quite complex when compared to FPTP system, and it also increases the amount of political instability by promoting multiple party system and coalition governments. So in this way, let us understand what should be the ideal way forward in order to get the best out of both voting systems. Now in this regard, the Law Commission of India, in its 170th report, it suggested introduction of mixed member proportional representation system, which is abbreviated as MMPR system. Now, this MMPR system is followed in many advanced democracies, such as in Germany, where 50% of voting happens through first past the post system and 50% of voting happens through proportionate response system. Whereas in New Zealand, 60% of vote happens through first past the post system and rest 40% seats, they are filled through proportional representation method. Now, as per the Law Commission of India, India should adopt a mixed model which ensure that 75% of seats are filled through the existing system, whereas the rest 25% of seats are filled through proportionate response system. And this can be done through implementation of the system of 2 votes per voter, as against current system, as current voter is only expected to give 1 vote in a favor of a particular candidate. However, when we change this system into 2 votes per voter, it will ensure that the voter gives 2 votes. First vote should be given to a particular candidate and another vote should be given to a particular political party. So this will ensure that the candidates, they are elected through first past the post system, whereas the political party, they will get adequate proportional representation based on the amount of votes they are able to secure. So this is the way forward which is suggested by the Election Commission, that India should adopt a mixed member proportional representation, as it will get the best out of 2 voting systems. However, this voting system also is replete with many challenges which I have put down in the notes, and you can refer to these notes after the session ends. Understood? So with this, we move to next article of the day, which you can see appeared again in the Business Line newspaper. Now, this newspaper highlights that India is witnessing a surge in amount of installation of solar panels, which are used to generate solar electricity. However, disposing of these panels, they account for significant amount of environmental pollution also, which makes this news article important from GS paper 3 perspective. So in this regard, let us understand why is solar panel recycling important from Indian environment point of view. Now, India has witnessed a significant growth in its solar installed capacity, because currently the solar installed capacity is as much as that of 10 gigawatts, which is expected to go up till 292 gigawatts by the year 2030, because Indian government has set a target. Now, based on this increased installation of solar panels, it is expected that the estimate solar panel waste will be about 600 kilotons, which is quite a significant amount. So in this regard, the solar panel recycling becomes important. Why? Because first of all, the solar panels, they are made up of various important and valuable raw materials such as copper, cadmium, telluride, and also silver. So as we ensure solar panel recycling, it will enable the government to extract more of its valuable materials, which currently India is import dependent on. So whenever India is able to extract these valuable materials from solar waste, it will reduce the amount of import dependency of our country. Further, as we have witnessed due to various transport issues and damage, Indian solar panel cells have what you can call a shorter operational life as against their expected life cycle of 15 years. So because of this shorter life cycle, it is very much essential for government to adopt 3R principle, that is reduce, reuse and recycle. So in this regard, let us understand what are the steps that have been undertaken by Government of India in order to encourage the recycling of solar waste. Now, first of all, government ministry, that is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, it recently amended the electronic waste management rules, and it categorized solar panel cells as e-waste. Further, it also identified solar PV recycling as one of the technologies under Research Technological Development Initiative under the renewable energy program. Further, amending the e-waste management rules, government has also extended the producer of solar cells to track and manage the solar wastage in a country, which is also called as an extended producer responsibilities, which have been also given to in plastic waste and other waste as well. Further, let us understand what should be the way forward in order to reduce efficiently reuse our solar panel cells. As first of all, mapping the exact amount of waste in our country is important, as it will then enable efficiently managing of our solar waste. So in this regard, the CEEW, that is Council of Energy, Environment and Water, it has given certain suggestions. First of all, this body suggested creation of robust infrastructure in our country, which will enable logistic development, storage solution, as well as dismantling centers and recycling facilities. As creation of robust infrastructure for waste management, it is very much or the first step forward in management of recycling of solar panels. Additionally, there's also a need to introduce innovative financing in order to promote private sector participation in solar cells recycling. Further, US government has also undertaken some kind of design modification in their solar panels, which suggested replacing polymer plastic sheets with that of glass sheets, which will enable recycling of solar panels more efficiently. So this was the summary of today's article on solar panel recycling. And with this, let us move to another set of articles. Now, the next set of articles, the first of which you can see appeared in the Hindu, Indian Express as well as Business Line newspaper. Now, this article highlights that 72 Council of Ministers have been sworn in yesterday. Now, it is not important for an aspirant to know which party has got the maximum share of these 72 ministers. However, what is important is the categorization of ministers in India. Because there was this prelims question in the year 2022 on what kind of different kind of ranks in our country's ministry. Further, structure, organization and functioning of our country's executive, it becomes important from GS paper 2 perspective. So in this regard, let us understand what is the Council of Ministers. Now, according to our constitution, Article 74 of our constitution says that there shall be a Council of Ministers in our country which will be headed by Prime Minister. And according to Article 75, it is the President of India which appoints both Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. Now, the President of India, he or she, they appoint Council of Ministers based on the recommendation of the Prime Minister himself. Now, the Constitution of India, it does not categorize various different kind of ministers. However, by 44th Amendment Act, the word cabinet was introduced in our constitution. However, this word cabinet was not defined in the constitution even after the 44th Amendment Act. So in this regard, let us understand what are the different kind of or different categories of ministers in the Indian government system. Now, as I've already made you understand that Constitution of India, it does not highlight different various kind of Council of Ministers, and this category is determined by transaction of business rules of Government of India, which came into application from the year 1961. Now, this categorizes different kind of ministers, the most important of which is the Prime Minister of the country, who is the head of the Indian government. Now, the Prime Minister of our country, he or she nominates different kind of ministers, the most important of which are the cabinet ministers. Now, these cabinet ministers, they are in charge of various ministries and they are solely responsible for the functioning of this ministry as per the advice of the Prime Minister himself. Now, lower in the hierarchy comes Minister of States, which are of two different types, that are of independent charge and Minister of State. Now, Minister of State of independent charge, they are given independent charge of a particular ministry, Whereas on the other hand, the Minister of State, they operate under the overall guidance of cabinet ministers, as they are in charge of a particular department of or departments in a particular ministry. Now, lower than that comes deputy ministers, who are not given independent charge of ministries, and they are attached to the cabinet ministers themselves. Now, also, more innovation in the Indian parliamentary system are the parliamentary secretaries, who are appointed by the Prime Minister himself and not the President of India. Now, these parliamentary secretaries, they are attached with various ministries, and they work according to the aid and advice of cabinet ministers in general. Now, Indian Constitution, as per the Article 75, it highlights the strength of Council of Ministers, which according to Article 75 should not exceed more than 15% of the total strength of Lok Sabha, which means in current composition of our country's Lok Sabha, there cannot be more than 81 ministers in our country, which also includes the Prime Minister himself. Further, the ministers, they can be appointed from either house of the parliament, that is from Raj Sabha or Lok Sabha. And also, the ministers can also be appointed even if they are not members of these either two houses. However, there's one condition also, that any member who is appointed as a minister, and if he or she is not a member of a parliament, then they have a 6-month period to attain the membership of either house, failing which their ministerialship will be declared as void. So these are the various categories of ministers, and how are the strength of ministers decided by the Constitution of India as per the Article 75. Now, in this regard, let us now solve the practice question. Now, the first statement, it states that the Council of Ministers can only be drawn from Lok Sabha, which is an incorrect statement, as they can also be drawn from Raj Sabha also. Now, the total number of ministers, including the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, shall not exceed 10% of the total strength of Lok Sabha. Now, this is incorrect because 91st Amendment Act, which was enacted in 2003, it highlighted that the maximum strength of Council of Ministers should not exceed 15% of total strength of Lok Sabha. Now, the third statement, the minister who is not a member of the parliament for any period of the consecutive 6 months shall be ceased to be a minister, which again is a correct statement, because for any member to be who is appointed as a minister, he or she should be able to get the membership of either of two houses in a period of 6 months, failing which their ministerialship will be declared as a vague. Now, how many of these statements given above is or are correct? As you can see, only third statement is correct. Hence, option A is the right answer. Moving to the next article, which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper at the last Science and Tech page. Now, this highlights that low-cost MRI machine has been developed in the country of Hong Kong. Now, this development, it is important from a socio-economic perspective, as it is essential to provide low-cost medical diagnostic in a country like India. Further, this topic becomes important from GS Paper 3 syllabus, and it highlights science and technology, its development and their application in everyday life. Further, important questions related to science and technology and their application, such as 3D printing, has been asked by UPSC before in the past. So you can expect a question on MRI diagnostic also. Now, in this regard, let us understand what is this MRI or magnetic resource imaging process. Now, as you can understand, our body consists of hydrogen in form of water. Now, these hydrogen, they consist of electrons and protons who have a significant characteristic called spin. Now, this spin can be influenced by a strong magnetic field. So, the MRI machine, it has a strong it generates a strong magnetic field, which then aligns the spin of these protons in a particular direction. Now, this makes the protons or atoms in our body in an excited state. So this MRI machine also has a radio frequency pulse emitter, which then emits radio frequency, which are then absorbed by these aligned protons. And whenever this RF switch is turned off, these excited protons, they emit this radio frequency wave, which is then assessed by the MRI machine, and this is converted in a form of 2D or a 3D image of our body tissues. And this provides the magnetic resource imaging of our body's tissues. And this becomes important because of its various application, as it can help image the brain, cardiovascular system, spinal cord and joints, various muscles such as liver and arteries. Further, it is also important as it is a non-invasive diagnostic process, because there is no need to make incisions in a particular body, as it helps gain the images of soft tissues within our body without providing any threat to the patients also, as it provides no long-term harm to which can be associated with various scans such as X-rays. Further, the magnetic field used in these machines, they are quite strong, as they generate as much as 4 to 8 times the amount of magnetic field generated by the sunspot of a sun. However, despite various applications, there are also significant limitations on the use of this machine. First is that patients who have metallic objects embedded in them, such as implants or pacemaker, they cannot undergo scans in the MRI machines. Further, the cost of this machine, they are quite expensive, making them cost prohibitive. Further, in major hospitals, the scan undertaken by the patient, they can charge as much as 100 or 10,000 rupees per MRI scan. Further, this causes discomfort in form of claustrophobia, as the patient, they are required to be inserted into this machine. Further, even if the patient moves in process of the scanning, which can take several minutes, the scan has to happen again. So based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. Magnetic resource imaging has application in which of the following? The first is identifying abnormalities in the brain, which is a correct statement. Visualizing spinal cord, which is correct. Diagnosing heart system, again correct. Further, it also helps in detecting cancerous cells in our tissue. So as all these statements are correct, hence option D, that is all 4 statements are correct, is the right answer. Now moving on to the next article, which again appeared in the Hindu newspaper at the last page, that is science and tech section. Now this highlights the hydrogen line, as it is a unique signal used in extraterrestrial investigations. Now this topic is important from GS paper 3 syllabus, as the syllabus highlights awareness in the field of space. Further developments in the space sector is also a subject of UPSC questions in the prelims. Case in point, this question of the year 2017. So in this regard, let us understand what is this hydrogen line phenomena. Now this phenomena, it is a specific electromagnetic emission which is undertaken from a neutral hydrogen atom. Now this emission is also known as a 21 centimeter line, because it is observed as at a wavelength of 21 centimeter in the radio spectrum. Now this phenomena is observed during a change in spin state of electron relative to the proton. Let us understand how. Now as you can see, as I have already highlighted, hydrogen atoms, it consists of one proton and one electron. Now these proton and electron, they have different characteristic, which is called a spin. Now whenever these proton and electron, they have a spin which is aligned in the same direction, it is called as an aligned state. However, whenever the spin is in opposite direction, it is called as a non-aligned spin. Now most of the hydrogen atoms, it exists in this aligned state only. However, whenever there is a flip in the spin of these protons and electrons, it is called as a spin flip phenomena, and there is a significant emission of the electromagnetic waves. Now these waves, when captured, can identify the amount of emissions by a hydrogen atom. Now, this hydrogen line, as the name suggests, it emits whenever there is a spin flip phenomena from aligned to anti-aligned or non-aligned state. As this atom, they shed this excess amount of energy in a form of electromagnetic radiation of a wavelength of 21 centimeter. Now, this has various application, especially in the field of astronomy, because most of the nascent Milky Way and star, they have huge amount of hydrogen atoms present in them. So whenever these hydrogen atoms undergo the process of spin flip, they emit large amount of electromagnetic waves which can be captured in order to map the Milky Way and also to gauge the formation of new stars. Further, these emissions, which are called as spin flip, it is expected to be a line of communication for extraterrestrial intelligence. So most of the space missions which gauge the presence of extraterrestrial missions, it is also essential to undertake or understand the frequency of these emissions. So these are the significance in the field of astronomy. So based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. Now, the term hydrogen line, sometimes in news, is seen in the context of initiative of government in manufacture of green hydrogen. Incorrect. Tool to assess the presence of hydrogen gas in atmosphere. Again incorrect. Use of cryogenic hydrogen in rocket technology. Again incorrect. Or spectroscopic analysis of astronomical objects to detect the presence of hydrogen, which you can understand is a correct answer to this practice question. As this hydrogen line, it is essential to understand the presence of hydrogen in the outer space. So with this, we move to the last article of the day, which appeared in the Business Line newspaper. And this article highlights the successful launch of the Agnibaan Rocket. Now, various launch vehicles such as PSLV and GSLV, they have been subject of UPSC's question in the past. Further, GS Paper 3 syllabus highlights achievements of Indians in the field of science and technology. So in this regard, let us understand what is this Agnibaan rocket is all about. Now, this Agnibaan technological demonstrator was fired by a private company called Agnikul Cosmos, which is based in the IIT Madras, that is Center of Combustion Research and Development. Further, this private company signed a framework agreement with Department of Space, which enabled this company to access ISRO's facility and technical expertise to manufacture rockets. Now, this is a significant step, as ISRO in general in the recent past has been looking to increase private sector participation in day-to-day space launch activities. So this news becomes important. Further, this company came up with a Agnibaan rocket, which is world's first single piece, which is powered by world's first single piece 3D printed engine, and it is designed and built indigenously. Further, this also uses a semi-cryogenic engine, which utilizes aviation turbine at an ambient temperature and also utilizes liquid oxygen in cryogenic condition. Further, it is also first privately fired rocket which was entirely controlled during the duration of its complete flight. Further, this rocket is customizable, which makes it adequate for multiple uses, and it is a two-stage launch vehicle which is powered by a liquid fuel, and it has a potential to carry a payload of up to 300 kilogram to the altitude of 700 kilometers up in the space. So with this information, let us now solve the practice question. Consider the following statements. Agnibaan sorted, which was launched by ISRO, which again is an incorrect statement because it was launched by a private company called Agnikul Cosmos. The second statement, the Agnibaan rocket, it is a 4-stage launch vehicle with the capacity to carry up to 300 kilogram of payload, which again is an incorrect statement because it is a 2-stage rocket. Further, the Agnibaan sorted, it uses world's first single piece 3D printed engine, which again is a correct statement, as this engine was designed and developed indigenously. Now this question asks us to identify incorrect statement. Pay close attention. It wants us to identify incorrect and not correct statement. So as two statements that are 1 and 2 are incorrect, hence option B is the right answer to this practice question. So with this, we conclude our today's session of Daily News Simplified, and we'll see you again tomorrow at 6 p.m. And until then, please make sure to study. With this, I bid you a very good night.